Ladies and gentlemen, friends and fellow supporters of freedom, today we stand before these silent yet powerful portraits, faces that wrote history with their blood and illuminated the path to freedom. Today, June 21st, 2025, is a date that marks the beginning of a nationwide revolutionary resistance, a turning point defined by courage, conviction, and an unbreakable will to defy tyranny. June 20th is the Day of the Martyrs and Political Prisoners, a day to honor those who stood tall in the face of oppression. Their faces are before us now, but their voices still echo through the streets of Iran. It was on this day in 1987 that the National Liberation Army of Iran was founded, a force born of the people's will, organized for one purpose: freedom. June 20th also marks the beginning of a profound ideological leap, led by a woman whose name is now inseparable from the struggle for liberty, Maryam Rajavi. She embodies a vision in which women are not victims, but leaders. She reminds us that the emancipation of women is essential to the liberation of all. And above all, June 20th stands as a day of honor over humiliation, of resistance, of surrender. It draws a clear political line. Reconciliation with tyrants is over. It declares you are either with the people or you're with the oppressors. No dictatorship, be it a monarchy or a mullah. Yes to freedom, yes to regime. Since that day, 44 years ago, June has become more than just a date. It has become a culture of defiance. Generations of young Iranians have grown up, not with fear, but the fire of resistance in their hearts. The courage to say no has become their inheritance and their responsibility. This exhibition is not just about the past, it mirrors the reflection of the future. From these images that we see here, we look to the brave young rising in Iran today. From the sacrifices of the martyrs, we drew strength. From the legacy of the MEK, we find direction. And from the spirit of June 20th, we make our choice. And that choice is no to dictatorship, be it a monarchy or the mullahs. Thank you for being here. And now it is my honor to introduce our youth representatives, young voices of our community who carry the spirit of resistance in their hearts. They are here to share their perspectives, their hopes, and their deep commitment to the courageous youth in Iran who, at this very moment, are risking everything, including their livelihoods, to stand up to tyranny. These young voices are not only witnesses to a historic struggle, but they are part of it. Let us now introduce our first speaker.
ای ایران ای مرز پرگوهر ای خاکت سرچشمه هنر دور از تو اندیشه بدان پاینده مانی تو جاودان زنده باد خاک ایران ما.
Hello, my name is Isla. I'm here today not just as an American youth, but as a member of a generation that knows what it means to live free, to speak freely, to dream boldly, to choose our paths without fear. And that is exactly why I stand here, deeply moved in front of powerful exhibition of faces. Young women and men, many from Iran's Gen Z, who had those same dreams. Dreams were met with not opportunity, but with bullets, with prisons, with torture, and with silence. These faces, they could be my classmates, they could be my friends, it could be me. But these images represent more than just one generation. They reflect more than 40 years of struggle for freedom, led by a dedicated movement, the MEK. The MEK has stood firm against tyranny and paid an unimaginable price and inspired generations after. This exhibition is a testament to the sacrifices made by those who refused to surrender. And today their legacy is carried forward by a new force, young and courageous resistance units inside Iran. Right now, as we gather here freely, they are risking their lives in the streets of Tehran and beyond. They have inherited the same commitment and the same vision and the same fire that burned in the hearts of those before them. This exhibition is not a memorial from the past. It is a cry from the present. These aren't faded pictures. These are mirrors of a generation that is still rising. Their fight hasn't ended. It's ongoing, and it transcends generations. It doesn't begin or end with Gen Z. It belongs to humanity, and it demands our solidarity. Why? Because silence helps the oppressor, never the oppressed. Because every dictatorship hopes the world isn't watching. Because when young Iranians risk their lives, the least we can do is raise our voices. We can share their stories, we can pressure their leaders, and we can call for justice. We can say their names. And so, to every young person here, and anyone who has ever wondered if their voice matters, look at these faces. Their silence was forced, but ours is our choice. Let's choose to speak for them. Thank you.
خانم ها و آقایان، مردم آزاد در آمریکا و شما دوستان آزادی که امروز اینجا ایستاده اید، در مقابل چشمان ما عکس‌های بهترین فرزندان ایران قرار دارد. جوانانی که با قلب‌های لبریز از عشق آزادی به خیابان‌ها آمدند و گفتند نه به دیکتاتوری، نه به ولایت فقیه، نه به سرنوشتی که با سرنیزه و اعدام و شکنجه نوشته شده است. ما نسل امروز از این تصاویر الهام می‌گیریم، اما الهام ما فقط از فداگیری نیست. الهام ما از راه و استراتژیستی که این عزیزان انتخاب کردند، راهی که از 30 خرداد 1360 آغاز شد، وقتی جوانان آن نسلی به دیکتاتوری نه گفتند و قیمتش را با جان خود پرداختند. امروز ما نسل دهه 80 و 90 شمسی همان را ادامه میدیم. تبلیغات مسمونی رژیم علیه مجاهدین دیگه کارگر نیست. ما حقیقت را دیدیم. سازمان مجاهدین خلق و کانونهای شورشی قلب تبنده مقاومت مردم ایران اند. مقاومتی که بیش از 40 سال است پابر اجاست، نه از قدرت اسلحه بلکه از ایمان به مردم، از رنج مادران، از عزم زنان و از امید جوانان نیرو میگیرد. امروز رهبر این مقاومت در دستان زنی است که خودنماد ایستادگی و روشنایی است. خانم مریم رجوی، کسی که نه فقط برای سرنگونی بلکه برای آینده هم برنامه دارد. طرح 10 مدعی او برای ایران آزاد، یعنی برابری زن و مرد، جمهوری، آزادی بیان، لغو حکم اعدام و ایران غیر اتمی و صلح طلب. این سخن امروز من در برای آرزوهای شخصی یا نجات فردی نیست. ما اینجا هستیم چون میخوایم سرنوشت خودمون تعیین کنیم. میخواهیم سازنده جامعه باشد که در آن آزادی و عدالت واقعیت باشد، نه شعار. ما آمدیم تا بگوییم در برابر رژیم که با اعدام و سرکوب میخواهد سرنوشت ما حاکم باشد، ما ایستاده ایم. ما از خواهران و برادران شورشی در ایران حمایت میکنیم و ما تا روزی که ایران آزاد شود پشت آن مقاومت می ایستیم. زنده باد آزادی، زنده باد مقاومت و زنده باد ایران.
نسل قیام می جوشد، ایران می خروشد. نسل قیام می جوشد، ایران می خروشد. کانونهای شورشی درود بر رزمتان، سلام بر عزمتان. کانونهای شورشی درود بر رزمتان، سلام بر عزمتان. Down with terrorist regime of Iran. Down with terrorist regime of Iran. Regime change in Iran by the people of Iran. Regime change in Iran by the people of Iran. What do we want? What do we want? When do we want it? When do we want it? Stop execution in Iran! Now, now, now! Stop execution in Iran. Now, now, now. مرگ بر خامنه ای، درود بر رجوی. مرگ بر خامنه ای، درود بر رجوی. انقلاب رسم ماست، سرنگونی عزم ماست. انقلاب رسم ماست، سرنگونی عزم ماست. مرگ بر ستمگر، چه شاه باشه چه رهبر. مرگ بر ستمگر، چه شاه باشه چه رهبر. سر مال ولایت عامل جنگ و نفرت. سر مال ولایت عامل جنگ و نفرت. با اتمی بی اتمی سرنگون سرنگون. با اتمی بی اتمی سرنگون سرنگون.
Okay, thank you to our youth representatives and young voices of our community. Now, please join me in welcoming the members of the Iranian community who have personally endured the brutality of this regime, families of political prisoners, survivors of torture, and those who lost loved ones to executions. Their presence is a powerful reminder of the price paid for freedom and the strength of the people who refuse to be silenced. These families not only carry the memory of the fallen, but also echo the message of Iran's ongoing uprisings, that the people of Iran are determined to achieve a free, democratic, and secular republic.
خواهرها برادرها، صدای مردم ایران باشیم، بلند فریاد بکشین. Down with terrorist regime of Iran! Down with terrorist regime of Iran! با اتمی بی اتمی سرنگون سرنگون. با اتمی بی اتمی سرنگون سرنگون.
یاران و همراهان عزیز، دوستان همصدا در آرمان آزادی، من طاهره هستم، خواهری که برادرش را این رژیم دیکتاتوری قرون وسطایی کشت. نه به خاطر جنایتی، نه به خاطر خطایی، فقط به خاطر اینکه نه به ولایت فقیه، نه به حکومت جهل و جنایت و آری به آزادی گفت. برادرم یکی از همان جوانهایی بود که در 30 خرداد 1360 وقتی خمینی فرمان سرکوب داد ایستاد. او به مجاهدین پیوست، نه فقط برای اعتراض بلکه برای تغییر، برای سرنگونی و برای آینده. و امروز بعد از بیش از 40 سال من با افتخار میگویم که راهش ادامه دارد، نه فقط در خاطره ها بلکه در قلب و عمل کانونهای شورشی. نسل امروز ایران، نسل 80 و 90 با همه فشارها، با همه تبلیغات مسموم رژیم راه را پیدا کرده است. آنها فهمیدند که این حکومت اصلاح پذیر نیست. آنها فهمیدند که تنها راه همان استراتژی است که مجاهدین خلق 40 سال قبل آغاز کردند: ایستادگی، جنگیدن و سرنگونی. رژیم با میلیاردها دلار تبلیغات با رسانه‌هایش با شکنجه و تهدید خواست تصویر مجاهدین را مخدوش کند، اما شکست خورد. چرا؟ چون حقیقت خاموش نمی شود، چون مردم ایران به خصوص جوانها با گوشت و پوستشان ظلم را لمس کردند. و چون امروز در هر شهر، در هر کوچه صدای کانونهای شورشی پژواک صدای برادرم و هزاران شهید دیگر است. در قلب این مقاومت، در قلب این نبرد زنی ایستاده است که شایسته ترین نماینده مردم ایران برای فردای آزاد ایران است. خانم مریم رجبی. او نه فقط یک رهبر سیاسی بلکه تجسم امید و عزت زن ایرانی است. در دنیایی که دیکتاتورها زنان را به حاشیه میرانند، او رهبری جنبشی را بر عهده دارد که مردم سالاری، برابری، جدایی دین از دولت و ایران غیر اتمی را در طرح 10 ماده‌ایش تضمین کرده است. من به عنوان یک زن ایرانی به او افتخار می‌کنم، به او که نشان داد رهبری زنانه نه فقط ممکن بلکه ضروری است. ضروری است برای شکستن زنجیرها. دوستان عزیز، ما اینجا جمع نشدیم که فقط دردها رو مرور کنیم. ما آمدیم که یک پیام روشن بدهیم. ما نسل نه هستیم. نه به تسلیم، نه به مماشات، نه به سازش با جنایت و نه به جنگ. ما آمدیم تا خود آینده را پس بگیریم. نه فقط برای اینکه بتوانیم آزاد حرف بزنیم، بلکه برای اینکه بتوانیم سرنوشت خود را خود تعیین کنیم و در جامعه نقش داشته باشیم، رهبر باشیم، تأثیر بگذاریم و این فقط در سایه سرنگونی این رژیم ممکن است. پس بیایید در کنار جوانان شورشی در ایران بایستیم. بیایید صدای کسانی باشیم که در کوچه های تهران، سنندج، زاهدان، مشهد، مازندران با بهای جان شعار می‌دهند: مرگ بر ستمگر، چه شاه باشه چه رهبر.
شاه باشه چه رهبر.
اگر امروز ما در آزادی نفس می‌کشیم، وظیفه ماست که برای آزادی آنها فریاد بزنیم. و اگر خون برادرم و هزاران شهید، مجاهد شهید راهی باز کرده، امروز وقت آن است که همه ما در این راه شریک شویم. پیروزی نزدیک است. آزادی حق ماست. سرنگونی ممکن است و ما آن را محقق خواهیم کرد. سپاسگزارم.
محاکمه قاتلان خواسته خلق ایران. محاکمه قاتلان خواسته خلق ایران. Down with terrorist regime of Iran. Down with terrorist regime of Iran.
Good afternoon to all of our guests here today and to all of our distinguished speakers. And good afternoon, dearest friends and family, brothers and sisters of the revolution. My name is Handaneh Amanpour. I am a member of the Iranian American community living in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. I am an attorney by trade, a civil litigator practicing in Northern Virginia. I am a mother to 3 beautiful children, an active member of my community, and so much more. But before I was any of these things, I was a member of the Iranian resistance first, born and bred. Beginning with the Iranian Revolution, my parents were members of the Iranian resistance from before I was even born. Amongst the sea of martyrs we see before us, you will find a picture of my father, Mehrtash Amanpour, who made the ultimate sacrifice when he was murdered by the Khomeini regime in 1988. I was only 5 at the time. You could spend hours walking around, looking at each and every face represented in this memorial, taking in each life. But even if you filled this entire city with pictures, you would not be able to capture all of the lives that have been impacted by this brutal regime. Because among these photos, you will also find a picture of me taking my first steps, guided by 2 other young men that were murdered by this regime. There are lots of me out there. I am no anomaly. I am very much the norm for the Iranian people because there are lots of us out there. And for the thousands upon thousands that paid with their lives, we are here to stand in their place and continue the fight. The regime is on its knees. It has never been weaker. Its reign of terror at home and abroad for over 45 years has finally reached the day of reckoning. With foreign invaders at their doorstep, the Iranian people can take no more, because it is our people that must finally slay the dragon that is the monstrous regime. It is our people that must reclaim our faith and take back our glorious land. To the people of my homeland, even though we are thousands of miles away, we are with you. We never left you, and we will continue to be by your side as you rise up against this brutal regime and finish them. مرگ بر اصل ولایت فقیه، زنده باد ارتش آزادی بخش ملی.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is clerical. I'm the brother of Behruz, Bahman, and Reza Torshizi. Three of my brothers have been killed by the regime in Iran, and their pictures are here. One of my friends asked me, which one are your brothers? I said, to be honest with you, it doesn't make any difference. All of these are my brothers and sisters. 44 years ago, on June 20th, 1981, the regime of Khomeini started the war with the Iranian people. The Iranian people, they wanted one word, freedom. And Khomeini denied that word for them, and instead sent all of the people who are against them to the prison. One day, my younger brother, Behruz, he disappeared. We did not know what happened to him. After 17 days, in the official newspaper of Iran, they wrote, Behruz Torshizi, son of Ali, has been executed. My father goes to the authority and asks, why? And the answer was, he was participating in a peaceful demonstration and taking pictures. And my father said, you killed my son for taking pictures? It's unacceptable. And the clergy said something to my father that is shocking. He said, Haji, do you believe that your son was innocent? My father said, of course he was innocent. He said, why are you worried about it? He's gonna go to heaven. This regime has no values for human life. During these 44 years, every year the regime has killed so many of Iranian people just for demanding basic rights. And the struggle has started. And we were telling the world that this regime cannot be modified. This regime is a brutal regime. But the appeasement policy was the policy up to date. Many people ask, is there an alternative? Yes, National Council of Resistance of Iran is the alternative to this regime. And a few months ago in the US Congress, H-Res 166 asked the administration to recognize the right of Iranian people for resistance. Thank you so much.
Down with terrorist regime of Iran. What do we want?
Regime change in Iran.
What do we want?
Regime change in Iran.
When do we want it?
Now, now, now.
When do we want it?
Now, now, now.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my honor to introduce a distinguished guest who has long stood for freedom, security, and human dignity, Ambassador Carla Sands. Ambassador Sands served as the United States Ambassador to the Kingdom of Denmark, where she advanced American leadership and values in Europe and beyond. She is a vocal supporter of liberty, a strong national security, and a principled U.S. foreign policy. Today, she stands with the Iranian people, in their fight against tyranny and in support of a free, secular, and democratic and non-nuclear Iran. Now please join me in welcoming her.
Thank you. Thank you for that kind introduction. I just want us all to look around at all those beautiful faces on those placards. It goes almost as far as the eye can see. I want us to look at those faces, those beautiful young faces. Those are heroes. Those are Iranian patriots. They were all standing up for freedom. They were standing with the National Council of Resistance of Iran. And this exhibition that I've just walked through, it honors 60 years of Iran's leading pro-democracy movement, the MEK, resisting both the Shah's dictatorship and the current theocracy. These faces, these beautiful faces of the fallen, embody both the foundation and the promise of a free, non-nuclear, secular republic in Iran, and one that is within reach. The pictures on display today demonstrate the very high price paid to create a culture and make a guiding example for the new generations that you just heard from, the millennials, the Gen Z, the now Gen Alpha. And it's a clear testimony and guarantee that Iran will be freed by those who continue this path of risking their lives every day to confront the IRGC. The exhibit today shows why the MEK's resistance units have been expanding. They're embedded in the social fabric. They're difficult for the regime to eliminate. They're deeply integrated within the general population and society at large. And the resistance units are expanding their presence throughout Iran. They actively challenge the regime's strongholds of oppression and terror. And their primary goal is to dismantle the atmosphere of fear and repression, highlighting the regime's vulnerabilities and opening the way for the people's uprising. Despite Tehran's relentless attempts to suppress dissent, the resistance units continue their mission, significantly influencing Iranians' landscape. I want to thank you all for your patience for the last 40 years. You know, I was a young woman when I saw the takeover by the mullahs after the fall of the Shah. I saw the American hostages, and then I saw them released when President Ronald Reagan was sworn into office as a young woman. The mullahs have brought religious fascism to Iran. They've exported terror around the world. They've funded and groomed the Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the terror units within Iran itself. I want to thank Maryam Rajavi and the National Council of Resistance of Iran, the NCRI, for inviting me to speak with you today. Your movement is growing and it's gaining momentum. And regarding the great people of Iran, the global community must end this era of concessions and appeasement. No more patient waiting for this regime to moderate. The Iranian people are asking the world to side with them. The global community must give a full-throated support for a free, democratically elected, secular republic in Iran. And this means that the people reject rules by mullahs and monarchs and dictators. This means an end to abusive government that doesn't serve the people. The documented abuses of the women of Iran and the execution of so many thousands of Iranian patriots by the regime are an affront to civilization. Over the years, we've seen the cold-blooded killing of protesters in the streets of Iran. And we stayed silent while we watched them bleed in the streets, and we failed to support the people. In 2022, the world watched while the brutal regime killed beautiful Mahsa Amini while she was in custody of the morality police for not properly wearing her hijab and covering her hair. You know, a beautiful opera was created in her memory, and I watched that opera. And the Iranian people were protesting, and we watched around the world. But the world did not support them. We stayed silent. In fact, the Biden administration scolded the people of Iran for fighting for their freedom. The inhumane acts, including arbitrary arrests and detention because of the forced mandatory hijab and the gender segregation, have been widely and persistently employed by the Iranian authorities in response against discrimination of women. And these incidents have often involved excessive force, humiliation, intimidation, both verbal and physical abuse, alongside of fines. And the Iranians' authorities' treatment of women detained for the improper hijab has included torture, such as rape and other sexual abuse, sometimes resulting in fatalities. The violence against women for resisting the mandatory hijab and gender segregation has inflicted terrible, serious injury on women, both mental and physical. Tens of thousands of patriots and more have been jailed for fighting for freedom and refusing to kowtow to this ruthless regime. Thousands of movement supporters have been killed in Iran, and I'm asking, will you support the people of Iran? I'm talking to the global leaders all across the world who stand for democracy. The current Iranian regime poses a danger to the world and to the region. The deadly rhetoric by the mullahs and their proxies must be taken seriously. What do they say? Death to Israel, death to America, death to the MEK. For 23 years, the Iranian regime has lied about their nuclear program. This program is against the wishes of the Iranian people. Even though the Iran regime has spent about $1 trillion on nuclear development, only 2% of Iran's energy comes from nuclear. Meanwhile, in spite of having abundant oil and gas, some of the biggest oil and gas fields in the world, the regime has only invested minor amounts in oil and gas. In fact, they even lack refineries. Very little infrastructure. And although the regime has claimed it wants to negotiate with the Trump administration, the Supreme Leader has declared that their nuclear program is a red line. Now he's in hiding. And President Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio have been crystal clear. There must be zero nuclear enrichment. And to that end, the President has provided the Iranian regime with a diplomatic pathway to dismantle its program. President Trump has repeatedly stated that his preference is for a peaceful agreement between the U.S. and Iran, but he's left the military option on the table. We're now days into the 2 weeks that the president has given the mullahs to agree to denuclearize. You know, soon after President Trump returned to office, he issued a national security memorandum. He reinstated the maximum pressure campaign on Iran. And since then, we've seen additional sanctions, most notably secondary sanctions, against Iran and those who purchase Iranian oil. It's announced almost weekly new sanctions. In contrast, the Biden administration refused to enforce the sanctions and most significantly allowed oil sales to China, which enriched the regime by about $90 billion over 4 years. That's a lot of money, and that's on top of what the Biden administration paid for the lives of a few American hostages, billions to the regime, enriching their terror and their proxies. When Maryam Rajavi, when she addressed the United States Congressional Caucus on Human Rights, she did not ask for American boots on the ground. She did not ask for money. She simply asked that the United States recognize the right of Iranians to determine their own destiny. They want a secular, non-nuclear republic. The NCRI is on the right side of history. Maryam Rajavi and the NCRI have created a brilliant 10-point plan. It's aimed at establishing an elected government that serves all the Iranian people, not a few corrupt elite. They and their plan reject clerical rule and empower the people to determine their own fate. They stand for freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of the press and internet. They call for dismantling of the IRGC and the Quds Force. They affirm a commitment to individual and social freedoms and rights in accordance with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. They demand an end to censorship and justice for political prisoners. They call for separation between religion and state and for freedom of religion. They demand full gender equality across society and an end to all forms of discrimination. The right to choose one's own clothing, equality in marriage and divorce, equality in education and employment opportunities, including in politics. They advocate for an independent judiciary anchored in international standards based on the presumption of innocence, the right to counsel, the right of appeal, and the right to be tried in a court by an independent judge. They call for the abolition of Sharia law, for fair treatment of ethnic minorities, and autonomy of Iranian Kurdistan. They promote environmental protection and rejuvenation of the environment, and a non-nuclear Iran devoid of weapons of mass destruction, rooted in international and regional cooperation for peaceful coexistence. The movement is committed to free and fair elections, no appeasement, no war. The NCRI is offering a third way forward for Iran, rejecting appeasement and war. They're calling for change by the people of Iran through organized resistance. They're not asking for boots on the ground or financial aid. They believe that regime change is the task of the Iranian people. They will determine their own destiny. With their brilliant 10-point plan, Maryam Rajavi as president-elect and the NCRI can lead to a great rebirth of Iran, a new Iran that rejoins the community of nations, where young, educated Iranian patriots can proudly take their place, their rightful place in the world. Now is the time for the people of Iran to act. We must not wait. Thank you.
Thank you. Regime change in Iran by the people of Iran. Regime change in Iran by the people of Iran. Regime change in Iran by the people of Iran. Regime change in Iran by the people of Iran.
Thank you, Mrs. Vance, for your unwavering support and your dedication to this cause. And she is absolutely correct. We cannot stay silent, especially in moments like this. Now it is a great privilege to introduce a champion of civil rights and a steadfast voice for freedom, Ms. Linda Chavez. Ms. Chavez is the chair of the Center of Equal Opportunity and formerly served as the director of the White House Office of Public Liaison. Throughout her distinguished career, she has worked tirelessly to defend democratic values, equal opportunity, and human rights, both in the United States and around the world. Most importantly, for us today, she is a dear and trusted friend of Ms. Maryam Rajavi and the Iranian resistance. She has stood shoulder to shoulder with the Iranian people in her pursuit for a free, democratic, and non-nuclear Republic of Iran. Now please join me in a warm welcoming of Ms. Chavez.
درود بر رجوی.
Thank you very much for that very nice introduction. And I must say that every time I am with you, you inspire me. I have been side by side with the MEK throughout my long history working on human rights, going back to the 1990s when I was the independent U.S. expert at the United Nations Human Rights Subcommission. That was the first time that I ever met anyone from the MEK. And when I met them, I was amazed at the amount of information they gave me and shared with me about what was happening in Iran to the Iranian people. The tortures, the murders, the public hangings, Evin Prison, where so many, and even some people, I assume, in this crowd, have been imprisoned. So in 2012, I was first asked to come and meet Madame Rajavi in Paris and to join with the resistance movement there as someone who believes in freedom and believes in the right of people to self-determination. All of the world right now is focused on what is happening in the Middle East and in Iran in particular. And it is unfortunate that it takes bombs dropping to get people to understand what is happening in Iran. Because what is happening now, the murders, the executions of these wonderful resistance fighters who were displayed here in the first row, which have occurred only in the last few days. This is something that goes on in Iran day in and day out. And while I think it is important to fight this tyranny and for the world to gather together to support those who are fighting the Iranian regime, in the end, it is the Iranian people who are going to determine the fate of Iran. There must be regime change. We've been talking about that literally for decades, but that regime change will come when the people themselves rise up. And what will take place after the regime changes? Well, we know Madame Rajavi has a 10-point plan that supports, as the ambassador suggested, all of the things that we as Americans believe, basically the freedoms of the 10 amendments to our Constitution that constitute the Bill of Rights, and also many of the principles that are embedded in the Constitution itself. She believes, and the MEK and the National Council of Resistance believe, in the freedom to choose their own leaders. They believe in the freedom to choose how they will worship, that there should not be a state religion that imposes a certain set of beliefs on all people. Love of God must come from within the human soul. Each and every individual has the right to decide how to exercise that freedom. Similarly, men and women must stand side by side as partners and must be given equal rights. You cannot have a state that essentially will not recognize half of its population and their rights, that basically make them like chattel. They cannot have control over their own children. They have none of the political and civil rights that men have, which are very limited in Iran, but Iranian women have even less. So we're gathered here today, and it's not an accident that we are gathered at the foot of the U.S. Capitol. Because one of the things that I think we need to fight for, those of us who are Americans, is recognition of the resistance movement led by Madame Rajavi. She has proven herself a leader, and we have seen support for that resistance movement, as the ambassador suggested, from Republicans, but we've also seen it from Democrats. And in fact, the resolutions being sponsored in the Senate and the House have both Democrat and Republican co-sponsors. And I think that's important. It used to be in America that our partisanship ended at the shore, that we might have our differences here in the United States when we're at home, but once the United States projected its image to the world, we stood united. We need to do that again, and one of the things that I've been very heartened by in terms of the National Resistance Movement, the National Council of Resistance of Iran, is the way in which they have brought people together who may bicker and dispute and not agree on much of anything when it comes to domestic policy, but they are agreed on the threat that Iran poses. So it is both a wonderful and humbling experience to be invited to join you today. But as I look out over that sea of faces, and particularly those faces in the first row, these are people who a week or two ago were alive, but they have been executed by this dreadful regime in Iran. We have to remember that it is not just a handful, it's not even the handful of placards that we show here. In 1988, the regime killed 30,000 people. It is almost unimaginable, the kind of slaughter that has taken place. So I want to give you my encouragement. Thank you for your support of this movement, and perhaps in the not too distant future, we won't be in front of the Capitol, we'll be in the streets of Tehran. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Chavez, and for your years of dedication to human rights around the world, regardless of origin. Now, please join me in welcoming a dedicated advocate for justice and equal rights, Mr. Rudy Gersten. Mr. Gersten is the Executive Director for the Center of Equal Opportunity, where he leads efforts to promote fairness, opportunity, and civil rights for all Americans. But beyond his leadership role, he is also a dear friend of the Iranian resistance and a huge, steadfast supporter of the Iranian people's struggle for freedom and democracy. We are honored to have him with us today, and now please give me a warm welcome to Mr. Rudy Gersten.
Thank you. I want to thank Madame Rajavi and the MEK and the National Council of Resistance of Iran for their leadership, both in the fight against the terrorist regime in Iran and their efforts to promote regime change democracy, and freedom for the Iranian people. For 60 years, the MEK have been Iran's leading pro-democracy movement. They have bravely opposed the regime from inside Iran and out, put themselves at risk, and provided much-needed intelligence on repression in Iran, including the nuclear program. For years, I have traveled to the Free Iran summits, from Ashraf 3 in Tirana to Brussels, to Berlin, to Paris, to exhibits back here in Washington, D.C. And for those in America, the Iranian regime poses no threat to Americans. I beg to differ. I was there at the rally in 2018 in France, along with the American delegation. The regime sent an Iranian diplomat to bomb the event with a half kilo of TATP explosives. They were en route when French and Belgian special forces thwarted the attack. I was there in Tirana when another terror warning disrupted the Free Iran event. My mother is on the Iranian regime's official sanctions list, which is just a euphemism for its hit list. It's the same list that Ambassador John Bolton was on when the regime tried to assassinate him on American soil in 2022. The regime and its proxies have tried and successfully killed thousands of Americans over the years, from the Marine barracks and embassy bombings in Beirut, to regime-backed militias killing hundreds of American soldiers in Iraq, to more recent strikes on American bases in 2020, in 2023, and 2024, and even this month. Last year, they plotted to kill a U.S. president. And the agent that ordered that attack, that was ordered to carry out that assassination, is still at large. So this regime is not just the biggest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. They are not simply one of the world's worst human rights violators, torturing their own civilians every single day. They are not just a destabilizing force in the Middle East. They are the head of the snake, the progenitors of terrorist organizations like Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and others. A genocidal regime hell-bent on attaining nuclear bombs. And they have a decades-long history of targeting Americans, from civilians to high-ranking officials to the President of the United States. The only solution to the current crisis is the overthrow of this regime by the Iranian people. The United States should recognize the right of the resistance units to confront the IRGC. Only then will Iran's terrorist regime be replaced by a democratic, non-nuclear republic based on the separation of religion and state. We must do everything we can to help support the Iranian resistance and promote regime change in Iran. Thank you.
Thank you, Rudy, and thank you for your honorable work and deep dedication and passion for freedom. Now, it is a great honor to introduce a distinguished scholar and educator, Professor Michelle Friend of George Washington University. Professor Friend is a renowned philosopher and professor at George Washington University. Her expertise lie in philosophy of mathematics with a focus on logic, pluralism, and foundations of mathematical thought. Professor Friend brings intellectual depth and a principled voice to every conversation on truth, reason, and justice. We are grateful to have her with us today. And now please join me in warm welcoming Professor Michelle Friend.
It is an honor for me to address you here today, and I thank you for the invitation. I speak to you as a concerned citizen and as a philosopher. The good news is I'm not a long-winded philosopher. I'll keep it very short. We are here to pay homage to the 120,000 Iranians executed by the regime in Iran. They fought for freedom, responsibility, peace, and democracy. To put the numbers in perspective, the population of Iran is 90 million people. It's 1% of the world's population. So 1 in 900 have been executed. Also, in comparison, in the last 15 years, there have been 22 people executed in the United States. A regime that executes its own people, especially for political reasons, people it pretends to govern, is pathological. It harms itself. In contrast, proper governance is about fostering and enabling people. Proper governance encourages debate and participation in decisions. The mark of a democracy is the ability to peacefully oppose the governing body without fear of retribution. To everyone here, it is clear that the present regime of Iran does not govern properly. Indeed, the escalation in domestic violence over the last year testifies to the fear and insecurity of the present regime. The conflict with Israel testifies to the fear and insecurity of both Israel and Iran. Violence is a last measure. It is a desperate measure. The present situation in Iran is very delicate. I see either more drastic domestic political suppression, along with war against Israel, civil war, or capitulation of the regime. We might see all three in that order. We are gathered here to support swift capitulation and to help shape the future. It is in this way that we can honor the 120,000 Iranians executed by the regime. Let us turn to the future. Especially with a violent regime, regime change is an unpredictable, delicate, and vulnerable moment in the history of a nation. There is a power vacuum that is created, and that vacuum will be filled. Mariam Rajavi, leader of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, is ready to fill the vacuum, to bring about real change. See her 10-point plan. She intends not to rule, but to set up a long-lasting democracy with freedom of choice in religion, freedom of work, and freedom of political opinion. To ensure longevity, a healing process will have to be instilled deeply in the culture. Resistance will have to be replaced with healing of self and of others. This is why women leadership is important. With women leadership, the healing can be properly started. To think about it, it is hard for a military-trained person to turn to healing. When Mariam Rajavi steps into the power vacuum, Iran will have a real chance to be an example to the world of how a delicate regime change can replace resistance and suppression with healing. She will have to be strong to maintain order for healing, not for power and suppression. This can only be done by good leadership, education of women, economic, social, and legal equality between men and women. The replacing of resistance with healing will not be instant. Patience and forgiveness will only gradually replace forbearance and suffering. I say that the healing will have to be instilled deeply for longevity, and that it will take time. This is because trauma marks our bodies and sits deep in our bodies for up to 7 generations. What is more, trauma is not only borne by the victim, but also by the inflictor. This is why forgiveness will be important and very difficult. The leaders of the regime today are despicable, desperate, and frightened. They probably are past healing and forgiveness. However, amongst those who work for the regime, many were coerced. Many have worked for the regime against their own hearts. The regime did not just use rewards to coerce so-called supporters, but also used threats to individuals and to families in the form of imprisonment and executions. Henchmen, denouncers, jailers, and executioners are rightly afraid of retribution should there be regime change. Now consider, if the many coerced supporters of the elite of the present regime are convinced that the new regime will have the wisdom and power to replace resistance with healing and forgiveness, they will put down their cudgels and will stop protecting the power elite. Deep inside, they know they need to heal and that they need help in healing. Through the healing and forgiveness, democracy can be relearned and cultivated. Democracy has to be fought for, not by armed combat, but by self-mastery, quiet and humble inner discipline. It is humility born of confidence, not a humility of weakness and submission, but of confidence. The sort of humility we often see in the women of Iran. The good news is that you have a powerful organization that is ready to assume power. It is an organization that shares this philosophy of power, a power born of love and respect, a power worth having. Maryam Rajavi is ready. The National Council of the Resistance of Iran is ready. You are ready. All the people who could not come to this rally for fear of retribution towards their family in Iran, they are ready. The people of Iran are ready. Even the coerced supporters of the regime will soon be ready. The wisely regulated regime change is how we will honor the 120,000 people executed. Thank you.
Thank you for all of our wonderful speakers, and most importantly, thank you for all of you that have joined us today, especially in this terrible heat. At this moment, we will pause for a short break, and then we will begin with a vigil. Again, thank you for all of you joining us today, and enjoy your break.